I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would never have believed that a family court judge would ask a custodial parent whether she should put her ex in jail today. And the quote was something like this: "Okay, is incarceration on the table today?" Remember that? Why then do we need a judge? The family court system is politically corrupted, an acquisition party, a money grab for lawyers and judges, forensics, court officers, parking lot attendants, assistant district attorneys, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just one of many examples we deliver to you on FIT TV every week. Family courts are the wild, wild west. I have with me to discuss this issue on my immediate left, Marc Schwaber, and to his left, Gary Jacobs. Okay, this is the wild, wild west.
Absolutely.
What can you expect? I mean, why would you expect a judge to offer to one of the litigants? This doesn't make any sense to me. Ever since I saw that, I just can't believe it. Well, what is the decision that I should make that you can make for me? That's exactly what happened.
I mean, you and I said, you mentioned in your opening, and you and I sat there in court in 2014 and listened to a family court judge ask an ex-spouse, would you like your ex-husband to be incarcerated?
Are we talking incarceration today on the table?
There, you're supposed to be a judge, and there's a law, and you're asking this person if they want to put the other person in jail?
If that didn't ruin anybody who witnessed that, I don't know what would. Because that was the end of the road for me.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the amazing part is they're the ones who brought you there in the first place. They're the ones who brought this new case to trial. And then, regardless of anything that you say, they actually look to your spouse and they ask, should your husband, or I guess it could be your wife, go to jail? And if they've gone that far, why not go the full way? Which is,
of course, they want to.
In turn, what happened to me?
This is why we call it the Wild Wild West. There is no place that I can go in my head that puts logic and that's to spell that out and say that's the way it should be. That judge is doing the right thing.
Well, that person is victimizing you, and then the judge is now becoming an extension of that victimization.
It's an accomplice.
You know what? You're trying to destroy this person. Well, guess what? I'm going to help you too, and I have a role.
That's right. Oh, by the way, I can help you get to where you want to. I can read your mind and tell you what you want to do with him.
Instead of the judge saying, you know what? Do you really want this person? They should be telling the person, look, this is our last resort. I mean, the case that we were in, they didn't even get to the point to see why this person should be incarcerated. It was the first thing out of the judge's mouth.
That's a good point. You know, why isn't, when that situation is possible, that the person who would be going to jail if this was going to happen isn't spelled out every step of the way what caused them to come to that decision? Isn't that justice? Shouldn't we know? Shouldn't we know?
I think we should have to go back and review the cases. I mean, jail is just the ultimate extreme. It is a painful situation for anybody to go through. And I think in a legal system or in the court system, they have to really realize what got you to that point. Are you 10% wrong? Are you 20% wrong?
That's what I'm saying.
And in my case, sometimes things are like, did you pay 90% of what you were supposed to pay? Did you pay 95? And in my case, I can answer, yes, I got to 95 out of 100% of what I was supposed to pay, but I still got incarcerated. And when I look at this, and I look at other cases now, what that does to you is so destructive. I mean, I went to see a doctor after that, and he looked at me and he said, you have a stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder. And he looked at me and he said, but you've been going through this stress disorder for 5 years already. For 5 years, I lived in a situation where I have actually now calculated the numbers, and I have paid out more in 5 years than I've earned in the 5 years. Does that does a judge not take that into account? I mean, the pain is unbelievable.
You're talking about taking into account. One of the things I say, if I'm a judge with common sense, and I hear an ex-wife say, I want my husband put in jail for 6 months. To me, that person, if you're a judge listening, that person ought to lose custody. Because if they're willing to take a child away from their father for 6 months, they're not fit to be a parent.
This is why it's the Wild Wild West.
We talk about the best interest of the children.
There isn't any logic to that, Gary.
That is not. They don't even put criminals in jail. If a husband and wife are married and they commit a major crime, they don't put the two parents in jail at the same time because it's not good for the children.
So who's going to be home with the kids?
Who's going to be home with the abuser?
What happened to debtor's prison? I mean, I was under the impression that that's a federal state of being. Why can't we put that into the state court law?
Well, it should be, but unfortunately, I think there's money to be made in putting people in jail. So where there's
Right.
money, you follow the trail.
But the taxpayers are
But
footing
it,
this
and
bill.
but it destroys families because it's not just money; it's whole families that suffer.
Well, Mark, the system is about destroying families. I mean,
But
it's
it's
a
not- I mean,
misnomer to believe that it's not.
in my case, my family came down. My parents showed up at the courtroom, and they couldn't understand. And my daughter showed up, and she couldn't understand.
No one's
and
gonna
tears came
understand these things,
down,
Mark. No
and no one understood that you
Right.
can work that hard for that many years, and still, there is no answer. I mean, it's just a horrible,
This is why
horrible
we
situation.
have to stop it. I mean, hoping that people see these programs and they start to get, wait a minute, this is something wrong with this. And people are doing that, by the way, but such small numbers. But they are getting back to us, letting know when they first saw the Dr. Carlos show that we put out there, and people started to call on it and email me and stuff. We really were starting to get hot. This subject is boiling over for a lot of people besides us.
And that's why they need to see somebody like Mark
And-
sitting here who's
yeah.
just a hard worker, loves his family. Does this mean he's not a murderer? He
no.
didn't steal millions of dollars from people. He's trying to work and support his children. I don't care what he did in this divorce. That shouldn't even be.
Absolutely.
I mean, the simplest thing is economies change. If I was making what I made in 2007 versus what I'm making today, I might not be sitting here today. But the point is, what I signed at one time in my life
Right.
it put me in debtor's prison. Exactly what you're talking about, and that's something you can't go to prison for anything else almost in the world. I can't think of another case where you can go to prison, or even beyond that, I can't think of this. You become so stressed that you're unable to get your court papers together that you have to keep going and hiring new attorneys until you run dry.
That's what I was saying, Gary,
We were
before
talking
we
about
talked
that.
about this. You really can't get your finger back onto where you were easily, no matter what
Well,
looks
it's a
obvious
vicious
and
cycle.
not.
You get into this cycle of, do I pay? And then the courts, if you go back, if you do everything you can to pay, and you borrow money, and you cash in your pension, and you sell your cars, and then you go to court and you say, I can't afford to pay this. The judge says, but you've been paying this for the last year.
Yeah.
Well, I've been paying it because I don't want to be in contempt of court, but I'm at the end of my road. I can't pay it. But unfortunately, the way the courts look at it is, you know what? He's full of it. If I threaten him with jail, he's going to still come up with the money. And then if you do come up with the money, the next time you go to court,
I'm
which
not
6
even
months
sure
later,
they're all clever too.
But
You
the-
signed the agreement. This is what trapped.
But the stress of it is the agreement, the everything else, the stress of it, of what you go through, of how your children perceive you. It
Big
becomes
part of it.
it's embarrassing
it's
for a child.
it's
Imagine
embarrassing.
your child telling him your father's in jail.
But how about the fact that you become a person of pain? You go and look. I'm a person who goes to a Buddhist monastery all the time and believes in trying to live in the moment. Unfortunately, when I walk out of that place very often, that moment is over and I'm back in the world of there's a lot of pain coming my way and I don't know how I'm going to handle it.
Right.
And take that and it becomes exasperated because all of a sudden now you're going to have to go to work. And every day you get up and you go to work, that stress is on you. Do you think you're performing at peak performance?
Sure.
Do you think you're ever going to get back to the numbers you were once hitting with that much
Of course
pain
you can't. Yeah.
sitting on you? We also knew in the olden days that, it took money to make money. Well, if you have no longer money, or if you're worrying about filling your gas tank, or you're worrying about taking a client out for a dinner because you know it's going to get you to the next level, and you don't take that client out to dinner,
Sure.
it changes the way you do things also.
Sure.
This is a painful
Yeah,
way of
it's
handling
not
things.
capitalistic, that's for sure, because they
No.
work against capitalism.
It just doesn't make sense. I mean, like, you're a situation, if you are still married and your income dropped, yeah, you may have to sell the Mercedes, you may have to sell the summer house, but if somebody's getting child support and maintenance, there's no correlation between how you're doing. And the answer is, well, go back to court and get a downward modification. And I'm sure you've seen it firsthand.
I've doing this 5 years already,
not
going from
easy.
downward modifications. And why should the spouse have to live in what was custom and common to them when you can't even live in the same way that you were living?
Right.
Or not even close. So all of a sudden you're living in a little house and they're living in a big house. Where do the kids want to stay?
Right.
You're an opportunity, though. The people who make money are opportunities for the government. The government tries to do something, it forces you to do it, which automatically makes you a criminal.
Right.
It's
Well, they're
all
setting
tied
you up,
together.
as we said, they're setting you up for this situation. If you would have come to Chris and I 2 years ago, we probably would have told you with that agreement that, look, here's what's coming. It's
Yeah.
not going to go away.
2 years, 8 years.
And they're going to tell you, well, you signed this stipulation, sir, and that means you could afford to do it. They don't care about all the other stuff that's in front. Now, there are ways that with a good attorney, you can prove, but you have to set up along the way that you can't do this. And it's not an easy, you almost have to be broke and cash in everything before you can get this downward modification. It doesn't, because if you have any money in the bank, they'll say, oh, you can still pay it, and pay it for another 6 months, and then we'll come back in 6 months and see if you're doing any better with your job. It's really a horrible system, and it gives the ex-spouse the power, which they shouldn't have. This is your life. You should, when you get divorced, you go on with your life.
I'm far more worried about getting my kids through all their colleges, education. I mean, one kid starting college, one kid in college right now. That's $100,000 a year on 2 college tuitions.
Sure.
I'm far more concerned with whether they make it through their college, and I make the promise that I've always said to them that you will never have a college loan, and I will get you through college, than worrying about giving another $50,000 or $100,000 a year to my ex, which doesn't make it to the kids anyway.
I hear you talking, but I know that's not the right attitude to take on the court. But as far as the kids are concerned, you have the right attitude and can't necessarily get there. They're going to do everything possible to take what they can from you, and
the kids will suffer in the long run.
Right? This is the best interest of kids, right?
It's a joke when people, we
joke.
talk about it all the time when everybody says, "Oh, you're going to court." They'll do what's best for your kids. You know what? Bullshit. They won't do what's best for your kid. They'll do what's best for your attorney, and they'll fight. And the judges in Suffolk County, Nassau County, Long Island, most of them have their own agenda, which was that you're the wage earner, you're the father, you're the bad guy. Sometimes the mother's the wage earner and a powerful person. They destroy her too.
Gary, let's try to walk through regarding the failing structure that the court system is, not only in the fact that the child support situation is messed up, but you can lose custody very easily by false allegations. There's so many things that can go wrong for a non-custodial parent. And they're not considering, because there's not enough people complaining, to create a non-custodial parent class. But am I right or wrong?
Absolutely, it's a class.
It's definitely a class.
Well, what I say is they're trying to turn, and they've done this to me and you and Mark. They're trying to turn you into an ATM, slowly but surely. When you're in court all this time, what are you talking about, Mark? You're talking about money.
That's all it is.
You're not talking about the kids it's family court. You're not talking about, are my kids starving? Do my kids not have any food to eat?
You may be thinking of your kids' college, but they're certainly not thinking about it.
But that was the amazing part, and that was the part that really was like, when the judge asked my ex-wife, is this affecting you adversely? And my ex-wife said, no, it is not. Monetarily, it was not affecting her, the fact that I couldn't have paid her the proper amount this past year.
Great, they're giving you downward five now.
They still came after me.
Yeah,
it wasn't a matter of that.
Because the signature is bigger than the quarterback.
But don't say still, Mark, because what people forget, a lot of times the ex-spouse uses the court and says, it's not me, it's the judge who put him in jail, because it's not me, it's child support enforcement. The power, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise, the power is with your spouse. She can go to the judge and say, you know what, I'm withdrawing my petition. He's satisfied it, and I'm agreeing to a downward modification because that's all he can afford right now. And I'll come back to court maybe for an increase if it goes up. The power is with your spouse.
Look at it every 2 years. Look at it every 3 years. There should actually be a rule. I hate the fact that there are no rules.
Well, there are rules, but unfortunately in the family court, that's what Chris called the Wild West.
Yeah, it's
right.
It's their structure, their own structure. They created. They created to get you. They didn't create it for children. That's for sure.
I mean, judges have judicial discretion. So your judge can say, you know what, Mr. Schwaber, you couldn't afford this. I see you couldn't afford it. I'm sorry, Mrs. Schwaber, we're not putting him in jail. He's doing the best he can. You said you're not suffering. So you know what? I'm going to dismiss your petition. And you know what? Come back to me in 6 months, Mr. Schwaber. Let me see if you made any more money.
That'll be
sounds like a dream right now, doesn't it? Now you know.
Maybe we'll extend it out another year or two after, but let's you
give
go back to work and give him a chance to build his business back.
Because how was that for your business, going to jail?
You know what? I got to be honest, and if a lot of people watching this, I was only in jail for 2 days.
Right.
I absolutely was ripped apart. My family stepped forward, and my family helped me out. And I still remember my brother and my parents waiting outside. And it's a horrible situation.
Oh.
I didn't know what to do. I was locked up for 21 out of 24 hours. And I felt like I was a real criminal, and I was treated like a real criminal. And I guess to the court system, I was a real criminal.
That's important because we always say the courts do whatever they can to keep people out of jail that first time. We go through all these programs. You don't want to put a teenager in jail because that labels him his whole life. He was in jail. He's exposed to bad people. It changes his outlook on the system.
How thoughtful of you, Gary, to say that.
And on life. So we should normally do whatever we can to keep people out of jail because now you know what? Your whole life now has changed because you've experienced going to jail.
Right.
Your kids have to tell them.
No, but I'm 50 years old. I've worked for 29 straight years. Doesn't that say something?
No.
This man should not be in jail. No, it doesn't. But But that, if we sat in a room, and
common sense.
I think if there was,
you're right,
I think
right.
we stood in a room and we actually had jurors as opposed to just a judge in family court, and they asked all the jurors there, did this person try to meet his obligation? That may be the thing. We should have a jury of our peers.
We've been saying that for a long time. A jury of our peers is the right thing to do. Can we do that?
Well, to me, you should be. Like you
I
said,
don't think you can do it
there's
in
no debtor's prison, but they have a loophole, which is they didn't put you in jail for not paying. They put you in jail for breaking an order to pay. So that's their loophole to get out of the system. But
I'm not saying, but we
but
don't
in
know, that's just
America,
wrong.
well, no, I agree. In America,
be
how
the
do
right
you
way to
have
do
one
it.
person make that decision to put somebody in jail? And the culture of these courts becomes the money earner, bad guy. You know, and as Chris said, you're a separate class as a non-custodial parent. You know, you're
Which
a separate
should be
class.
enough for you to get some civil rights on the federal level, but it doesn't on the state level.
How about the fact that I've actually spoken to some attorneys who I was dressed nicely for court, and I was even told dress down for court. I couldn't believe that somebody actually told me, and this was not my own attorney, but this was somebody else, that dress down for court. Look like you're in trouble. I mean, they're looking at your appearance and deciding what you could afford or can't afford. I mean, there's so much that goes on there.
Right.
That should none of this. It should all go down to common sense. Either you can or you can't afford certain things, and if you're working in a job where everything is W-2,
I wish I had
look at
the
it.
Child Support Standards Act jacket with me right now. I'd read you some of the comments made on the floor debate in 1988 before they passed the law that got everybody in trouble here. But in the arguments, you can hear primarily the conservatives were saying this is going to cause a lot of problems, going to cause relitigation. You're going to trap the non-custodial parent payer into a class. This is way back then. And because the Democrats were controlling the city, they got the bill to go right through. But that's what we're still living with, that same premise that its acquisition of money is beyond the children's
And it's become
needs.
cultural in the courts.
And it's become just like the Hillary Clinton's "It Takes a Village." It's become a narrative that carried, deadbeat dad, that's carried. It's all an existing reality we all face, even though we're not in it necessarily.
We've all seen judges that come in and they come in
Oh my God,
and they're an advocate. And they go to court and they say, oh, I'm going to stop this. And the first week or two on the bench, they're great. They're giving everybody the chance. And within a month, they're just like every other judge. Put the man in, or it's not always the father, but in most cases, the father or the wage earner. You know, he's the bad guy. He's the devil.
The audience needs to know that the state collects money from the federal government to produce more of the same.
Right. There's an incentive.
Well, actually, I noticed
matching
something
funds, don't they match
something for the first time recently,
Yeah.
which I had never noticed before. Maybe I've just been too wrapped up in everything else. But there's actually interest in other monies due to the family court services for collecting the money from me. I never saw that until recently on a statement.
They all
and I
just think about
realized
how much money they held.
how much money they're making from me being late
Right.
or having problems.
And do you know that sometimes they don't deliver the money directly, that they carry money in a float? The float is very large. You're talking about a lot of money, not just for people like us, but all over the county. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars collected at one little 30-day period of
I
interest.
assume it's got to be millions. I mean,
It probably is.
I think you're talking small
you're
dollars
right, you're right.
some of us walk into
You're
a
right.
court and get hit with a $100,000 fine in one shot, and the gavel goes
You're
down, and you have no
probably
idea
right.
what's
Well,
going on.
is that
There's a
reasonable?
service-
That's right. I think that's
like you
reasonable.
said, there's a service fee.
I think
that
it'd
they
be.
charge.
I think it'd be a million. I think you're
You're
probably
right.
talking millions a day.
Yeah, and that's just in the float. So
Right.
how are they managing not to survive as a business? They just get more money from the federal government because they have that much more money available to them in the pot? I can't figure that part out.
And even the interest, the statutory interest rate in child support enforcement unit is 9%. Well, who gets 9% of their money these days? Nobody gets 9%. But you know what? If your spouse owes you the money, you get 9%. That's unheard of.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, everything is not reality.
Well, the child dysfunction is growing out of this need to have the other parent available to them, and they can't be available because they're too busy trying to keep up with the financial obligation that the court creates. But the notice on the state side is they're not noticing the child dysfunction rising out of the divorce.
Do they look? Do they care?
No. Well, maybe we should state the obvious. We should come up with statistics that show the child dysfunction. I should have a show just on that one subject alone, because that's what's missing. What's missing is that how can this be in the child's best interest if child dysfunction is gradually rising with the more divorce acquisition
It's not
of
even
funds?
financially in their best interest, because when he's in jail for those, whether it was 2 days, he certainly wasn't earning money.
But there are people in jail for much longer periods of time, and I never realized that they wanted me to go to jail for 75 days. Now, that would have obviously ended my career, and I
Which
would
is
have had to
actually
start
less
over
than most,
again.
Mark. You're
Dr.
lucky.
Carlos was 6 months. And he,
Usually in
No,
6
no, no.
months is a standard. You have a judge that only gave you 75.
75.
That's how crazy it is.
75 or two days feels like a lifetime. I couldn't imagine what 75 would feel like.
Yeah.
And we talk about it. You get up and you go and you get up every day and you say today's going to be, or trying to believe that you can live in the precious present, and you get up every day and you think today's going to be my good day of work. You know what? Somewhere in the middle of the day, that little voice in the middle of inside your head, those voices start talking to you and they're saying, work harder,
Yeah, right,
because.
'cause you're-
And that because is because you're always in trouble. You're always behind the 8 ball. And I know I left from meetings at 5:45 this morning, and the whole day when I was in the meetings, I kept thinking,
Well-
maybe there's more I could be doing now.
did you ever think that your work ethic, as good as it is, would not work for you?
Right.
I
No.
mean, it works for everybody.
I actually, if
And-
you had asked me, and many years ago, I would have thought by age 50 or 55, 50 is where I am now, turning 51, and by 55 I would have already been retired. There was absolutely no doubt in my mind. And what I have
Now
done is
that's gonna-
split
now
my
that's
money in
gonna
half
change.
and then had 5 years where I've actually paid out more than I've earned.
You look at Robin Williams.
My
a lot of
life has
people-
changed
A lot of people don't
tremendously.
talk about Robin Williams. That one of the issues that he had was that this, I think it was spousal support was hanging over his head, and that he just felt like no matter how much he made, it was never enough money. He always had that looming over him.
I
And
didn't
some
see
people
that.
say that's
I would
why.
like to see that, yeah.
Some people are saying that that's part of what led to his suicide, was that he had to even take bad roles because he just had to take it in order to pay his ex the money.
Was that a
What?
combination child support alimony?
I believe it was just an alimony or spousal support, but it was a looming. And they talk about him having to take roles that he didn't think were good for him, but he knew if he didn't take it, he couldn't keep up with these humongous payments.
How about attempt jobs that you're not good at, or try to put yourself in too many places in the same day? If you should really have 2 or 3 meetings in a day and that's the tops, but you try to go to 5, are you actually performing the best at your 5 meetings? No. But you're trying to perform at a level that to feed
Where's
a
your
system.
Where's your incentive? That's what you're doing, right?
Well, the incentive is staying out of jail, believe it or not, or the incentive is not having bad
So it
dreams, or
goes
the
to
incentive could be paying your cable bills or not having to move from the house you're living in.
But it places everything above the needs of the children. You see what I mean?
It's also, to me, it's un-American. We're a capitalist society. We're supposed to be free.
Yeah, it's
But if
un-American,
you're getting divorced, unless you have a support payment for 15 years ahead of you, and you say, you know what, I'm going to change jobs. This job is going to pay me less money, but I think there's a better future for me. And you go to court and you say, you know what, I took a job making $20,000 a year less, but I think down the road, oh no, you still have to pay on the higher amount. That's not American. If you were married, you could do that. You could quit your job and start your own business. You can't do that. And like in some cases, where in New York, where the emancipation age is 21, if you get divorced when your child is 2 years old, for 19 years, you can never make a
Well,
decision.
forget just 19 years. I mean, emancipation, many of us signed, at least at the time I signed, I said, I'm not emancipating my children until they graduate college.
Right.
So you go from 21 to 22, and then you're paying in. What should get the money first, your children or your spouse? And that's another answer.
Right.
And it's probably a whole nother story or a whole nother time to come back here. But my opinion
Or your
is,
attorney and your spouse. If you don't, because if you
Oh
don't
my
pay,
God, yes.
if you don't pay your attorney,
He doesn't
then
show
you're
up.
going to jail and he doesn't show up. But if you pay your attorney and you go to jail, they say, well, you came up with the money to hire an attorney. It's a
I've
catch-22.
had
What do
that
you do?
I've had that happen,
You're
yeah.
choosing, like Mark said, you're choosing, do I pay,
Yeah.
do I give my ex-wife, do I give my kids money, do I give my attorney's money? In some cases, like Dr. Rivera, do I pay my medical malpractice insurance? What do you pay? I think you have no choice. You have to pay the spouse, so you go to jail.
No, you.
I don't even have the choice. It comes right out of my check.
I was
It's before I ever see a paycheck. It's already gone. So
salaried, not salaried in commission or something. How do you?
no, directly out. I pay 60% for the last 3 or 4 years directly out of my check before I even get it. And by the
After you're
time
done
by
with
the time
taxes,
I
you have
get done with
$1.50 for
taxes
for
and
soda.
health insurance, I walk away with about 20% of what I was earning.
We build a.
But then I still
lifetime-
get billed on top of that.
Oh yeah, it's going to keep coming too. We spend a lifetime trying to figure out what we're going to do when we have children. That how I'm going to protect them, how am I going to feed them, how am I going to house them, what kind of school they're going to go to in college in your case, and we all have to go through these kinds of decisions. A system that we have here that we've all faced, I'm still facing sometimes, create a place that you can no longer manage any of those thoughts you had for your entire life. When you want to be a father, you think about all these things ahead of time. Where am I going to put my kids? What kind of education is he going to get? Do I like the neighborhood where I'm going to put my kids? Should I buy this house because of my kids? And all these things are going in that direction. And then suddenly, bam, like an axe, it's all gone.
And you want to have that great relationship with your kids as they get older.
never
And that's
be the
where it
same.
starts deteriorating. And I'm hoping that someday it comes back to be the same.
Well, these years are gone. These years that you're losing, these precious years. You miss birthday parties. You
Sure.
miss big, large events. They're pushing him out of his child's.
But the
his children's
possibility, and
lives.
we've seen this before with other people who've been divorced, the possibility exists that it goes in the opposite way. It can't be recovered. There's alienation and things that sometimes happen to people in divorce. They never get
We've discussed this
reconnected.
before, but I do have
Right.
a good relationship with my children, but there are times where it's just not where I wanted or where I believed it should have been.
You have to compromise now in certain areas, don't
Tremendous compromise.
Yeah.
Tremendous. I mean, look, there are times that I look at them and I want to have a special dinner with them or a special event with them, which I was always able to pay for.
Yeah.
And now I have to change that event, and I get it. And maybe just what I have to understand is just being there for them is what it's
you
all
may want
about.
to enjoy vacations with your children. Those days are over.
Vacations are definitely
Because even
over.
if you had the money, they would go to court. How dare you spend that money taking your children on vacation without giving it to your ex-wife? So she can take
them on vacation.
That's
Exactly.
true. That's
I mean,
basically what it amounts to. We say that sometimes that when you're stuck in a situation, you really can't go forward. So you just hope when you drop back 15 yards and punt the ball to the offense and let them deal with it for a while, because you can't manage what you have. And that's where you're at right now.
Absolutely.
You just have to punt the ball and say, let me hide my head. I can't take the ball here.
And who does he go to? Because he's not used to going through, and most people were used to going through a situation like this. So they become victims of the attorneys.
Right.
Do I listen to is he really looking out for my best interest? Is he not? Who do I listen to? What direction do you don't even know how to deal with this whole situation
Right,
that's
right.
being
There's
thrust.
so much.
He's never dealt with, I don't think you've ever dealt with a criminal attorney before and dealt with going to jail. Now all of a sudden at 50 years old, you have to deal with a criminal attorney? I mean, I've been there. Chris has been there. I mean, who would think that all three of us sitting here, the taxpayers paid for all three of us to sit in a jail because of a divorce? How crazy is that?
In my case, I got lucky because there was a time when she knew that I was going to go in. My ex knew I was going to go in for 6 months because I gave up. I knew that I had to suffer that 6-month period, and I was remarried at that point. And I figured that maybe that's what I should do. That's when it ended, because that's when they uncuffed me, they let me go, and 2 days later I got custody of the kid. She said, "You were the responsible person," because I had done everything I could, exhausted all my funds, so my ex decided I was responsible and I got custody back.
But you had to get
Is
to the
that it?
bottom. Talk
In
about
other
that.
words, I had to get to the
You had
bottom.
to bottom out.
She bottomed me out. There was nothing. There's no place else to go.
So once you cry uncle or claim bankruptcy, you're okay.
That's what
Then
it-
you're a good father.
That's what it was. Yeah,
Well, I
That's a pretty bizarre.
Chris and I-
absolutely, but true.
Kids, I can't do anything for you anymore, but
Chris
but
and I
I'm a
tell-
good father now
we
because I have
tell people
nothing.
all the time when they come to us sometimes and they're so depressed, they've lost all their money, they haven't seen their kids, they're in court, and we'll say to them, you know what, you're actually in a good position now, like Chris was, because you got nothing to lose. Once somebody takes away your kids,
Right.
they take away your money, they
Right.
take away your. You
I
got
said,
nothing
"To hell with it. I'll go in." But
You
the
know
hell,
what? You'll
on
go
a
to
6-month vacation.
You'll fight, whatever it is. You have nothing to lose at that point. That's it. You reach the
scary.
end, and it's something liberating about it because the years you're going through a torture. You're trying to protect your assets. You're trying to protect your assets for your future.
How about for a comfortable
what do
retirement
you-
I
I was
once
gonna
prayed
say,
for?
what
Now
do you-
now
what do you-
now I'm going to be working the next 20 years to create new retirements and a
Right.
new
You're
world.
starting from scratch. You're
Starting from
50 years
scratch,
old.
but I'm not really starting from scratch.
You're starting from
I'm
less than
starting from
scratch.
less than scratch because I still have 3 or 4 more years of fighting.
So it's actually you were punished for being responsible. Really, at the end of the day, if you would have got divorced with no money in the bank and a job that didn't pay that much, we wouldn't be sitting here right now.
My life would be perfect.
It's sad, but it's true. So you're being
Because
punished.
I realized I could live on far less in the last
right.
5 or 6
Isn't
years.
this crazy how we have to adjust? I'm saying this program's done. We really did a great job. I'm going to end it with Rod Stewart, the singer, quote. He said, "Instead of getting married again, I'm going to find a woman I don't like and just give her the house." Societal and political trends are rapidly breaking down the family that once was a cornerstone of our great American culture. At FIT, we know you cannot get this information on your own, so we'll bring it to your TV every week. And we always invite all opposing views. My name is Chris DiMaggio. Thank you for watching FIT TV, and we'll see you again next week.